The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
When I first read this tweet, I thought it had to be fake. This will be the first presidential election since 1976 to not have a Biden, Bush, or Clinton on the ticket. I mean, you're telling me in almost 50 years we've had three families always on the ticket. That can't be right. But then I started doing the math. 1980, George Bush Sr., 84, George Bush Sr., 88, George Bush Sr., 92, Bill Clinton, 96, Bill Clinton, 2000, George W. Bush, 2004, George W. Bush again, 2008, Biden as VP, 2012, Biden as VP, 2016, Hillary Clinton, 2020, Biden as president. Is that not just the wildest? I mean, American political dynasties are so strange to begin with. Like, I don't love them. They smell a little too much like monarchy to me. So I think this is objectively a good thing.
How wild is that little blurb from that guy? This is the first election in 50 years without a Bush, Clinton, or Biden on the ticket. I mean, that's pretty nuts. That's pretty crazy if you really think about that. Well, here we are, everybody. Tuesday, November 5th, and it is election day. So, first of all, I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. And if you have not voted, get out there and vote. Give that one final plug. Anyway, today, what I thought I'd do is talk about a few different things and really just talk about what I saw over the weekend leading into today and leading into this election. And then I will kind of give you I think I already have, but I'll give you my predictions as far as, what I think is going to happen, not only with the election, but we'll talk about the Senate a little bit. The Senate is up for being potentially turned from the Democrats to the Republicans, and just overall maybe talk about kind of what I think is going on and who knows what could be the road ahead. All right, let's start off with really what took place over the weekend, in this final stretch for both candidates. And then, again, just some of the media coverage that received. And like I said, more than anything for me, whether I agree with one side or another, I really do like to look for these narratives and these directions that, again, I feel like the mainstream media is trying to take us. That to me, whether I agree with it or not, is more important to be able to just recognize this and then bring that really to your attention so then you can also recognize it and then decide, really decide how you want to view that and let that factor into your decision making of what is going on. Obviously, when it comes to Trump, the CNN, MSNBCs of the world, paint a very bleak picture of really everything that he does. And, I'll give you an example. Here was the CNN article talking about with just one day remaining before Election Day, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump delivered their contrasting final pitches to voters. Trump has invoked dark rhetoric in his final days on the campaign trail, saying that he shouldn't have left the White House after he lost the 2020 election. So what I noticed with all these outlets and then, the Democratic pundits, people like Joy Reid or D.L. Hughley or, all of them. I don't know. Those two just came to mind because I just saw recent Instagrams of theirs. Basically, they've really tried to paint this almost, I don't even want to say paint a picture, but almost set up like a potential January 6th again and another insurrection or another just chaotic event, led by Trump or invoked by Trump and then his supporters. I did see a lot of this talk about, how he said he is not going to leave. He's not going to accept the results of the election. It's also interesting that they talk about, well, if Trump won, he said he'll never leave the White House. That stuff to me is It's just ridiculous because, again, he lost in 2020 and he left the White House. Whatever you want to say about the January 6th controversy, it's fine. But the bottom line is he did leave. And so, trying to paint a picture that he's going to cause a revolution and cause a civil war, I think that's all just complete nonsense. I will say, oh, my voice creaked a little. I will say that, I do think the American people, if he ends up losing, something's going to happen. I mean, I think there's going to be quite a bit of outrage, and then where that outrage leads, we shall see. Okay, let me read the Harris stuff. It says Harris, meanwhile, has been reaching out and continues to reach out to Michigan's significant Arab American community by pledging to do everything in her power to end the war in Gaza if elected. Okay, so Harris will spend her final days campaigning in Michigan and Pennsylvania with rallies in major battleground cities in these states. Okay, so, to something like this, obviously it's a nice statement. This is just, you got to call BS on this. You got to call BS on this. Her and Biden have literally oversaw a 12-month genocide and continue to fund that genocide to Israel. And so for her to promise Arab Americans that, if you vote for me, I pledge it to do everything I can to end the war. They didn't go for it. They really didn't go for it. And that's why, gosh, I forget if I talked about this or if I didn't, but that's why in Michigan, which is a highly Arab American state, and then cities like Hamtramck, which is predominantly Arab American. The mayor is a Muslim guy. These guys came out and endorsed Trump. It was a very controversial endorsement, but all these high-level imams within the Muslim community, they actually had Trump on stage. They endorsed Trump, and it's caused a real division within the Arab American community because you've got people like, Mehdi Hassan, whom I really do respect. I think he's done some incredible coverage when it comes to the Gaza stuff. But that guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He really does. And he, started attacking these Muslim imams, saying, Trump is going to be worse. You just can't say that. You can't say that. There's nothing worse than what I've watched on my phone for the past 12 months. I mean, what has taken place? 40,000 plus, killed women and children. There's nothing worse than that. They point to, the Muslim ban that Trump passed in 2016. And again, gosh, I seriously forget if I've talked about this. But even with that Muslim ban, if you look it up, it never was really even enforced and never was really even put into practice. But fundamentally, anything that could happen doesn't hold a candle to what has happened. And I think that Arab American community has said, hey, there is just no chance we're going to vote for Kamala Harris because she's been a part of what has happened. And we'll roll the dice and take our chances with what could happen. So I think that's going to be the fundamental thing that allows Trump to win the state of Michigan. So there's one prediction. I do think Trump is going to win the state of Michigan. All right, really quick, let's shift gears to talking about the Senate real quick. So, with the Senate, it looks like there's about 10 seats that are very highly contended. And I won't bore you with who those people are, but this is such a crazy statistic. Listen to this. It says, since Labor Day weekend, Democrats have slightly outspent Republicans by about $696 million to $668 million across the races listed. So think about that. 600, almost 700 million, $1.4 billion has been spent since Labor Day in terms of advertising on the Senate races. So I don't even want to say the hilarious part, but it is kind of hilarious. So guess where that money Well, first of all, that's your money. That's taxpayer money from donations, right? That's people that donated. And then guess where that money went? That money went to Google, Facebook, Instagram, Meta. I know those are the same, but all of these online tech companies probably got the lion's share of it. Now, I'm sure there's also printing charges with all those crazy signs you see outside in everybody's lawn, or I'm sure your mail has been inundated by 8.5 by 11 flyers and other, pamphlets and things like that. But what's crazy is, man, who's the big winner during election season? It's all these tech companies, and then even, anyone that feeds off of the advertising revenue for these races. That's pretty amazing. The funny thing about the tech companies is, both of these parties supposedly rail against the tech companies, and then they put so much unbelievable money right back into it. So anyway, let's keep an eye out on the Senate. Let's see if that flips from Democrat to Republican. All right, now let's switch to talking a little bit about Israel and the situation in Palestine and Hamas and all that. And the only reason I want to bring this up is because, again, I do think there are three major issues that will play out even greater over the next couple months, and then definitely getting into 2025. And again, I mean, this is probably no surprise. If you've been listening, you can probably guess the three hot spots in the world right now. One, Russia, Ukraine. Two, Israel, Gaza, Palestine, Iran, that whole Middle East area. And then the third is Taiwan and China. Obviously, we've heard the least about Taiwan and China. That's definitely not kind of on the front burner, but as I've said, Taiwan is in every of these omnibus spending packages. So the United States is sending a ton of money there still. Ukraine gets the most money, Israel gets the second, and then Taiwan's getting the third. Anyway, all I'm going to read for you is some headlines that are in the Israeli newspapers. So this is pretty wild. There are three newspapers, actually two, Haaretz, and then the Times of Israel, and then also the Jerusalem Post, actually. So three of the major newspapers in Israel. Let me just read some of these because I was actually very surprised. I subscribe to their newsletter, so I get their stuff just to sort of see how they're covering it. And I will say I have seen over the past few days just a turn in direction. And you'll know what I mean when I start reading these. So just here's the headlines. How Netanyahu leveraged leaked and false Hamas documents as hostage protests surge. Okay. And the next one, leaked. Hamas documents suggest Netanyahu ran an influence campaign targeting fellow Israelis, and he does not want to have the hostages released. I mean, that's pretty insane, because obviously the hostages are his leverage, okay? Here's a third article. Always control the narrative. Leaks scandal offers glimpse into Netanyahu's world of lies. Wow, that's pretty crazy. So here's another one from Haaretz. Israel won't be destroyed by our enemies. The threat is from within. That's pretty nutty. That's definitely the most aggressive, I guess, anti-Netanyahu coverage I've seen from these papers collectively. So anyway, all right, there's that. And the main reason I bring that up is, by the same token, there is information floating around that Iran is prepping, a bigger, more decisive attack against Israel. So again, what is going to happen in that area, in that region, really between now and, let's say, January 20th or January, with whomever is going to be president being sworn in. So I do think there's going to be, it's honestly, I always like to think contrarian about all this stuff. And I like to think about something that could happen, honestly, that wasn't on the bingo card. You know what I mean? That's a funny expression. I'm going to start using it more. But something that wasn't on the bingo card. And that's what I think is going to happen in that region. I don't think it's just going to be Iran attacks, Israel attacks, Iran attacks, Israel attacks. Okay, we're in war and, that's it. I think there's going to be something that just is not expected. And quite frankly, something, that changes the direction, the perception, all that stuff when it comes to that region and kind of what's taking place right now, really between Israel Hamas, Israel Hezbollah, Israel Lebanon, Israel Iran. So we shall see. We shall see what happens there. All right, I'm just going to bounce around today. All right, I did watch I'm not done with it, but the second Netflix, this one's a documentary on the Menendez brothers. And seriously, if you have not watched the original one called Monsters, it's the one where there's actors involved playing the roles. Like I said, it's definitely dark and it's a little difficult to watch, but it's ridiculously good. Now, this second documentary, and I'm gonna talk about it without really ruining anything. The second documentary is more of a true documentary and obviously interviews a lot of the family members, and Lyle and Eric are involved in this quite a bit. And man, I will say I keep going back and forth on this thing. It's like one day I'm like, oh, they deserve to be let go, and I believe them when it comes to really it comes down to, did the parents really do all the horrible things for so long to them, or did they not? I mean, obviously they weren't good parents, I'll tell you that, but again, did they deserve to die? That's the question. So the two interesting things, and this is where I'm at, and if any of you have watched this, seriously, hit me up. I'd love to get your opinion on it. But really, where I've come to now is during the actual documentary, I will say, in their favor, nobody really came out in defense of the parents, Kitty and Jose. But I still just can't get over the spending spree and what the boys did after the murders. I mean, I just can't get over that. Like, I can't get over the fact that they bought a Porsche, bought a Jeep, bought a bunch of Rolex watches, took vacations. They stayed living in the house. I mean, man, that's wild to me that they stayed living in that house. And again, more than anything, I just don't believe them when they say, well, we were in such grief, and so that's how we managed our grief, by buying Rolexes and a Porsche and going on vacations and all that stuff. That's just tough. It's tough to believe that. It really is. And God, with everything, I do role reversal, which in this case, I hate even thinking along those lines, because obviously I had the exact opposite relationship with our parents, which has been nothing but wonderful. And again, I have a hard time believing that's how you deal with grief. So anyway, if anybody's into that stuff, hit me up. I love talking about that. All right, this episode is like the House of Pain song, Jump Around. I'm jumping around so many places. Okay, let me play you this. This is actually very interesting.
Have you ever seen a picture of the PayPal Mafia? These are guys who all basically live together. There's 23 people. Elon Musk was one of them. He was part of a gang of 23. Two of them started YouTube. One of them started LinkedIn. One of them started Yelp. Two of them started Palantir. Two of them started Founders Fund, the second biggest VC fund in history, Ken Howard and Peter Thiel.
So if you've never heard of the PayPal Mafia, this basically was this group of guys that all were part of PayPal before it was bought by eBay. And then from there, I mean, these dudes have really, really made their mark on the world. They really have. And collectively, really prior to recently, because I think there's definitely a little political division between them. And I'll talk about that in a second here. But prior to, recently, they've all, helped each other out and really been a part of each other's ventures and each other's companies and all that. I'm sharing this because honestly, I've realized that one of my, I don't know if I'd call it a mistake, although I guess I kind of would call it a mistake, is, one of the things that I wish I had done better was I wish I had surrounded myself in my various entrepreneurial ventures, with a team, and, not taken this Ray versus Wild or Ray versus the world approach that, some of it was necessary with the various ventures and businesses, because obviously you can't force people to get in on your vision. And when you are wanting to do something entrepreneurially or wanting to create something, you're not always going to be able to get people to join your vision and take the risk. I mean, it really does come down to risk. But I think this group of guys, all kind of had that bond of PayPal. Now, again, obviously it's a lot easier when PayPal gets acquired by eBay for, I think, multiple billions of dollars. And so you get a nice payout. So I think it's easier to take risk when you've had, a big victory like that. But let me read some of the people involved in this PayPal mafia. I just think it's interesting. All right, so probably who ended up being the most famous is Elon Musk. And so obviously Musk has Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, the Boring Company. He was an original founder of OpenAI, which is ChatGPT. And obviously now he bought X, former Twitter. Okay. Peter Thiel, this was like the second guy. He's huge, and he's a huge Republican supporter, and so is obviously Elon now. So with Peter Thiel, Palantir Technologies, that's a very interesting company. I'll have to talk about that another time. And then a big VC called Founders Fund, and then also multiple other VCs like Mithril Capital. I think that's the one that JD Vance is involved in. So JD Vance, really got his Peter Thiel is the one that's championed JD Vance. So anyway, I've talked about that before. There's a guy named Match Levchin. He founded Affirm. That's that payment company. Slide Glow, and a co-founder of Yelp.com. Reid Hoffman, you probably know him best from LinkedIn. And then he's a partner in a major VC called Greylock Partners. Now, Reid Hoffman is a huge, huge Democrat supporter. Like, he's one of the biggest Democrat supporters. Ironically, him and Sam Bankman-Fried, remember that guy from, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his crypto company, but from the crypto issue from years back, Sam Bankman-Fried and Reid Hoffman were the two biggest, I guess, supporters of the Democratic Party, along with Bill Gates in 2020. But Reid Hoffman is huge on the Democrat side. So I have to imagine there's some issues between Reid Hoffman now and then Musk and Peter Thiel. And then this guy, David Sachs. David Sachs is another guy that's really prominent on the Republican political scene now. He's part of that podcast that I've quoted a few times, the All In podcast with him, Chamath Palihapitiya, Jason Calacanis, and then that other guy, I'm forgetting his name. Okay, let's see who else is kind of famous here. The guy, you might not have heard of these guys too much, but there's a guy named Keith Rabios. He founded Square, Open Door, and then is also part of Founders Fund. Jeremy Stoppelman, he is the founder of Yelp and the CEO of Yelp. I mean, obviously Yelp is a big one. Steve Chen and Chad Hurley, and then Jared Karim. So these are the three guys that founded YouTube. How crazy is that? I think Chad Hurley's probably the most famous of those three, but they founded YouTube, sold that to Google, obviously, for like $2.5 billion, which at the time I remember thinking like, oh my God, these guys killed it. But man, I guarantee you they regret that, because obviously look at what YouTube has become. And then let's see, anybody else of worth here? there's a guy named Premal Shah. He founded Kiva, which is that, micro lending. It's like small little loans to entrepreneurs in third world countries. And then lastly, a guy named Ken Howery. Again, he's a big VC, and he was appointed the U.S. ambassador to Sweden by Trump. I don't know if he's still in that role or not. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I mean, I've known about the PayPal Mafia for a long time, but I don't know why that came across my radar, and it just made me, want to bring that up. So for all of you out there that are in, an early stage of an entrepreneurial venture, I will tell you, if you can get a team in place and, surround yourself with the right people, definitely do that. Definitely do that. And gosh, that even applies to life, surround yourself with the right people in life. I really feel that way these days, especially because of all the, there's just so much division in the world right now that, it is a good idea to surround yourself with like-minded people that, can add value to your life and that can help bring out the best in you and that are not argumentative and, maybe share the vision and thought process you have. Now, with that being said, we're not going to get along with everybody, and especially politically from our past. And I would caveat everything I just said with the fact that, remember, you've got lifelong equity with many, many people in this world whom you might not agree with politically. And the best thing you can do is either not talk about that stuff, or when you do talk about that stuff, try to agree to respect each other's opinions. Man, that's going to get harder moving forward. I really do think that. I think there's more major division coming, to this country, unfortunately. All right, I'm at 26 minutes. All right, let me give you my predictions, and then I'm going to leave it with two things. Okay, my predictions are, and man, I said this probably 3 months ago or several months ago, but I don't think we're going to have a winner declared on November 5th. So that's one. I think this is going to drag out pretty much all week. And all right, here's the two scenarios that really could take place. I think that scenario one, actually, before I give you the scenarios, I think that fundamentally it is going to be the most voted in election of all time. And now getting into the scenarios. Scenario one, and this is the one I think that's going to happen. I think Kamala's going to win, and I think she's going to end up with like 86 million votes. So it'll be more than what Biden got, which I think was like 81 or something. Here, let me check. Yeah, 81.3 million votes for Biden in 2020. I think she's going to beat that maybe by 5 million. So let's say 86 million votes. And again, when I say win, put that in quotes, okay? And read between the lines on that. All right. And then in terms of Trump, I think that he will get, 77 million, something, maybe 81 million, who knows, something more than what he got in 2020, which was 74.2 million. So I think he will also get it. It might even be even closer. It might even be ridiculously close. And, I think that will be what makes it look legit. All right. The fact that it's incredibly close is what is going to make it look legit. Okay. Now from there, that's scenario one. Scenario two, and this is one that honestly, this is interesting that my mind is moved in so many directions with this. And that is scenario two is that Trump wins, is that Trump wins, and he does win. What I have a hard time wrapping my mind around is this scenario. Trump wins, and then he takes vengeance on all these people that have created all this havoc for him over the past 8 years. I just don't think it's going to play out that simple. You know what I mean? Trump wins, he gets into office, and he starts to rain terror down on all the people that rained terror down on him. I just can't see that happening as plain as that, okay? So if the Trump-Vance ticket wins, I mean, look for something insane to happen. I'm just going to put it like that. Look for something insane to happen. Let me give you my thoughts on JD Vance, which is like, man, it's like an evolving thing on him. It's kind of like my thoughts on the Menendez brothers. That's pretty wild. I just compared those two. That's probably not nice to JD, but I will tell you this guy is incredibly sharp and incredibly intelligent. You know, I didn't know much about him prior to him getting picked as VP, but the more I listened to him, the dude is legit. He is absolutely legit. Now, the only thing about JD Vance is you have to decide, is he controlled opposition? And what I mean by that is he somebody that the billionaire donor class that are Republican, and wow, this kind of ties into the PayPal Mafia stuff that I talked about earlier. So I'm talking about Elon, Peter Thiel, David Sachs, all those guys that lean Republican, Reid Hoffman obviously being one of the biggest that would be opposed to someone like JD Vance. So the question with JD is he their guy, and is he their plant? And by him one day, sooner or later, becoming president, is that manufactured by that contingency, and will they reap tremendous benefits from that? I don't know, but that's plausible. That's definitely plausible. And when I think of him, like I said, my hesitation is that I will say I am absolutely, though, impressed with kind of his intellect and his command of geopolitics a lot more than I was, and I would put him on that plane with Vivek in terms of two people that, again, I just think they're super sharp. I think they're super sharp. Whether you agree or disagree with them, I would be hard pressed to come up with two Democrats right now that I think are as sharp as those guys. I do think, and again, whether I like him or you like him or not, I think Gavin Newsom is a hell of a politician. I don't think he has the intellect that JD Vance and Vivek do, but I think the guy is a hell of a politician, and I think he has a ridiculously bright future in the Democratic Party. I do think he's going to be their guy for 2028 regardless. But, you know, outside of him, I mean, there's nobody else that I can really think of that really impresses me on the Democratic side. And again, Gavin Newsom impresses me in a different way. Let me be clear. He doesn't necessarily impress me with the high level intellect, but he's a hell of a politician. He impresses me with that. He does. And that's just real talk. All right. My other prediction is that whenever the dust settles and whatever ends up happening, I do think that the situation in Israel, I think the hostages will get released. I don't think that situation is necessarily going to come to an end, but I do think that whether it's Kamala or whether it is Trump, I think they're going to be able to negotiate for a release of the hostages, and they're kind of going to look like the hero, you know, similar exactly like Reagan in 1980 with the 52 hostages in Iran who were held for 444 days. Actually, small little ironic thing in that, my brother and I are literally born 444 days apart, 4 months, or 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days. My mom likes to tell us that. That is a wild fun fact there. All right, so I do think the hostages are going to get released, which is a good thing. Thank God, those poor hostages. I mean, regardless of anything, that is just so sad that they have been, you know, political pawns in this gigantic game of chess. All right, I think that's good for predictions for now. Let's see what happens. I will absolutely try and get something out on Wednesday to kind of talk about what took place Tuesday. And I'm going to leave you with, man, Dana White. Dana White has been a frequent guest on the Deep Shallow Dive. And, he really does say a lot of things that I personally resonate with. I do. Now, again, he's probably more Republican right leaning than I definitely am. But again, I do like one thing about him that really to me resonates, and that is his sense of common sense. So here is an example. Call a spade a spade. All right, let's see what happens.
Everybody thinks I'm some kind of hardcore Republican. I'm right down the middle. I'm for common sense. There are a lot of things about me that, I would consider liberal, and there's a lot of things about me that I would consider conservative, but I'm all about common sense. And I don't judge people by their politics. I judge people whether, are you a douchebag? Okay? If you're a douchebag, I probably don't like you. Yeah. If you're a Democrat, I could give a shit who you vote for. That's the other thing that I don't like. I don't like people who judge people by who they vote for. This is America. You can vote for whoever the hell you want to, right? Or your religious beliefs or your whatever. I don't care about any of that stuff. Are you a good person or are you not a good person?
This guy was good.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.